Hello, and welcome to Netflix versus Cinema. Apologies if I sound a little bit downbeat. Before we hit record, we were talking about some world issues, and it is a bit depressing. What can I say? But anyway, I am Tosin. I am your host. I am based in the middle of the United Kingdom in a place called Bromsgrove, just outside Birmingham. And this is the podcast where, when we're not talking about world issues, we go to the cinema every week. We see a couple of films, rate them out of 5. We stay at home, rate things that we've seen out of 5. We put them up against each other, and we see where has the money been better spent this week. Were you better off going to the cinema or staying at home with Netflix and friends? I said my name is Tosin, and joining me as always from on the Isle of Wight is Sharon Bollen.
Hello.
And joining us all the way from London, our London correspondent is Holly Nesling.
Hello.
Yes, without a cat's tail up your nose this week. And
yes. only at present.
Yes. So unfortunately we do not have Sean Harris with us this week, but I'm pretty sure he will be back next week. We'll hear back and Sean will go beast mode, especially now that the Champions League group phase is over, which means that he can spend more time in the cinema like God intended and not watching his beloved Bournemouth. So let's kick off. What have we seen in cinemas this week?
That's an easy answer for me. I haven't seen anything this week.
Yes. Sharon, I'm beginning to worry about your Cineworld Unlimited card. I'm beginning to think that it's going to...
Well, I have been keeping a note of how many I'm watching, and at the moment, I'm still good. But I need to watch at least 2 this week.
Good. Because I was doing the similar thing with my card, and I was like, hang on, I only saw, I think either 1 or 2 films in December. They're stealing my money! and so... I figured out a thing where each Tuesday I can probably see 2 films back to back. If I leave the house at the right time, I might miss the first 2-3 minutes of the second film, but I can see 2 films back to back. And that way I'm like, yeah, now I feel happy because I feel like I'm not being cheated. But yes, okay, so nothing in the cinema for you, Sharon. Holly, how about you?
I have seen The Brutalist,
Ooh.
A Complete Unknown, and Hard Truths.
Hard Truths. All right, cool. Good stuff. And I saw September 5th, or September 5, however you want to say it. I saw that speaking about world events. Yeah. I saw that in the cinema, last night, and that was, I think it was a preview screening. It was a preview screening September 5.
I have to see that tomorrow or Friday.
All right, cool. Good stuff. All right, good stuff. We've already spoken about and we also have, and I feel like we need to have a little bit at the back end of where we just talk about Maria and Baby Girl quickly, because they have been, because January is such a awards month. They've put all these films in there. There's all these films we haven't had a chance to talk about, and Maria and Baby Girl have been waiting for about a month for us to talk about them, and we haven't been able to. And the way things are going, I'm not sure we are going to be able to before they go out of cinemas. So I think let's just talk about it quickly. So Ollie, we're just gonna give you some range to talk about that later on. Remind me if I forget. And how about at home? What have we seen at home on our sofas?
Sharon.
Well, I haven't seen. I'm still 1 more episode to go on a series I've been watching, but it's like an episode a week, so I'll have that ready for next week. So I have watched 1 film, and it coincided with the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and it's called the Windermere Children. I watched, which was on the BBC iPlayer. The Windermere Children.
The Windermere Children. Is that a film? Did you say?
That was a film. Yeah, that was a film.
Okay, cool. Windermere Children.
The Windermere,
all right. All right. How about you, Holly?
I have finished seasons 1 and 2 of Riviera, only 10 years behind everybody else. Very nearly season 3. And I am watching House of the Dragon for the nth time because I thought that people being eaten by dragons was more cheerful than international politics.
Yeah.
Wrong. You're not wrong.
I will back you on that. It's Riviera. Okay, well, because you are determined to get that into the show, so we will go with that.
It will not take long.
And I have seen a film on Amazon Prime Video called My Old Ass, which, as I've said, Holly, I would recommend to you. Oh, by the way, I know a couple of weeks ago I recommended Doom Patrol to the 2 of you, and the 2 of you seemed quite taken by my review about it. Has anybody clicked play on Doom Patrol yet?
No.
I go off the podcast and I forget exactly what we've said. So I
I'm lining up my my fresh
Bit of
post-it
paper
notes.
and my pen, my trusty pen. I'm going to write down Doom Patrol.
on
Yep.
ITVX. No, Sharon, you think that's bad, right? You think that's bad. Okay, so obviously I edit the podcast, so we finished recording. I edit the podcast, and very often while I'm editing the podcast, probably it used to, even when I edited on the same night as we record, I'm sitting down there going, right. So the title of this episode is, what did we talk about again? and I cannot remember the films that we spoke about an hour ago, and I have to go back through the recording and look at the videos and go, oh yeah, we spoke about that film first, and then that, I have to go with that. All right, cool.
I'm the same when we look through our thumbnails, because I monitor how our viewing figures are, blah 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 blah, and I look at the thumbnails and I think, did I review that? I can't remember.
It's like, hang on a second. Wait, on a YouTube channel, you're like, when did we talk about that? I don't remember. I
looked at one from the other day and was genuinely like, did we talk about that? And I'm like, well, my face is on the clip, so we must have done, and I must have been there for it. What did we say? This was a week ago. I was there.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And in random stuff that has, like, because we never know what it is that we review that all of a sudden seems to take on a life of its own. But American Primeval, we reviewed American Primeval, and that seems to be doing better than anything else we reviewed recently. I have no idea why. I have zero idea
200
why.
views in a week, and that's like, for us, that's
a lot for us.
Yeah.
That's a lot for us on you. Okay, all right. Okay, anyway, let's kick off in the cinema. Let's kick off with The Brutalist. And The Brutalist is, we talked about it being award season. The Brutalist is a film that, from my cynical point of view, seems tailor-made to be an Academy Awards darling. It seems like, I mean, because whatever it means or whatever you want to say about it, there is this correlation that if you do something that is Holocaust or Holocaust adjacent, it tends to do well at the Oscars. This is Holocaust adjacent. This is big prestige. It's 3 and something hours. It could be accused of being up itself. It has everything the Academy loves. And sure enough, it's been hoovering up all the awards. And so Holly was the one. Well, we're talking about a film called My Old Ass later on, and not to speculate about the age of your ass, Holly. But somebody call HR. But you subjected your ass to the 3 and a bit hours of this film. So tell us, The Brutalist, was it worth it? What was this about?
So I went to see The Brutalist last Friday. It is a film that lasts 4 hours in terms of cinema viewing. I have IMDb open in front of me to get my facts right. It's 3 hours and 34 minutes, and they give you an interval, which was gratefully received to do a little bit of leg stretch, jiggle backwards and forwards and regain some, feeling in my feet.
Yeah.
It is that I'm quoting this from IMDb because it sometimes gives you a sort of good start. When a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of modern United States, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious wealthy client. The film begins with the arrival of
Laszlo
Thought, Adrian Brody's character in New York as a not quite a refugee, but not far off, separated from his wife and his niece, who are still back in Eastern Europe. You watch him begin to establish himself in the US, staying with his cousin, or possibly his wife's cousin, a cousin, and his very, very American sort of blondish Catholic wife, and they are a Jewish family. You see him sort of establishing himself, coming in contact with via his cousin's furniture business people, and it becomes apparent that he is a very successful architect who had obviously sort of lost everything courtesy of the war.
Yeah,
he builds this connection with this very wealthy family, the patriarch played by Guy Pearce, and as a result of this connection, is able to get his wife over to the US from Hungary, as they were from Budapest. Along with his niece, who doesn't speak, which is a sort of element of complexity to their lives. And he finds himself commissioned to build this extraordinary building, working for Guy Pearce's character. It is a beautifully put together film, and it is absolutely epic. You know, Adrian Brody as Laszlo Toth is wonderful. Felicity Jones plays his wife Elizabeth beautifully. I say it's Guy Pearce. Joe Allen plays one of the characters.
He's one of Guy Pearce's sons, isn't he? Or is Guy Pearce's son? Yeah.
Yes, his son is very good. It is a very beautifully constructed but incredibly uncomfortable film physically to watch.
Okay.
The use of sound is fascinating. The use of movement is fascinating. So you spent the entire film, for me, on edge. Mm-hmm. It is beautifully done, but it is not an enjoyable film to watch. You can't watch it and say, gosh, this is lovely, because it really isn't. It's horrible. It addresses brutalism in every possible interpretation of the word, be it, going through architecture to, the behavior of humanity. It's stunningly constructed, but it is self-indulgent.
Okay.
It plays with, to some extent, it plays with tropes. It focuses deliberately on some of the least appealing aspects of humanity. I found myself watching it feeling very uncomfortable, and I got to the end and thought, I am so pleased I've seen this, and I am so pleased I don't need to see it again.
You're never watching it again.
It was one of those, and my parents watched it on the same day but a few hours before, and they hated it. Absolutely loathed it. And they said because they were looking for, they don't go to the cinema in the same way that we do.
Yes.
They go to the cinema because they want an enjoyable cinema going experience, whereas we go
escapism,
for a host of reasons. And this is not a film that is uplifting. You don't at any point in the film think, or very few points in the film think, yay, isn't life marvelous? It is a gritty and painful view of the film. It is not an enjoyable thing to watch, but it is stunning. It is visually amazing. As I say, the sound is superb. It's well constructed. It's well acted. Doesn't half go on a bit. I think it is impossible to deny that it is an incredibly long film. And in all honesty, I think they could probably have trimmed some of it back, because it is Oscar season.
Yeah, speaking about Oscar season, we just had the Oscar music playing us off, telling us that time was up for this review. And happily, because I do think this is going to do well on Oscar night.
I think it will very well. I can't decide if it's right that it does very well.
Yeah. I mean, there are some films that I feel like are very, essentially, when a film that, as I said, is sort of like Holocaust adjacent, so talks about that kind of stuff, and talks about the Jewish experience around World War II, comes out in sort of like December, January, it immediately sets off my sort of like, cynical Oscar bait alarm.
It deals with it's particularly therefore interesting as well with some of its dealings with Israel, given global politics and all sorts of things, where one could spend months analysing thoughts, feelings, and everything else. And this is not.
We have another film like that coming up soon.
Well, this is not the time nor the place for that level of analysis, but it is a very, very good film. It is not an enjoyable film. Cinema buddy Steph thought it was superb. I don't think had quite the same dislike that I did, but we both agreed on that we don't always agree. It's amazing. It's like two people can have different thoughts about stuff.
What? And still be friends? How dare you
really.
remain friends with her? She doesn't believe exactly what you believe at all times.
Shocking. I have to break it to both of you, but I'm afraid we don't all agree on everything either, and I
What?
don't know how we manage.
Okay, Holly, your mic is going off right now.
I am going to give it a 4.
Four stars for it.
Because whilst I appreciate that it's theoretically a 5-star film, I'm afraid I am for once knocking it down because of the fact that it was.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying. One of my questions was going to be, we're out of time, but one of my questions was going to be, do you think the runtime is justified? And it sounds like you are not. You don't think it is.
I could have killed half an hour from it without missing a beat.
Yeah, and I mean, and quite frankly, I'm speaking as someone who yesterday, I put out a tweet about this on Netflix versus Cinema account, where I went to the cinema, I got there at 7 p.m., and I left there at 10:30 p.m., having seen Companion and September 5th in about 3.5 hours. And that is, and I saw those two films in the time, like essentially, if you started watching the Brutalist at the time I'd walked in the cinema, you still wouldn't have finished by the time I'd left. I'd seen two films, and I was like, yeah, this is how long films should be.
I agree. Says it all.
So, anyway. Okay, cool. Now, that's 4 stars for The Brutalist, and I'm going to go over to Netflix and Friends, and we are going to talk The Windermere Children. So, Sharon, this is you. Talk to us about The Windermere Children. This is a very sort of World War II heavy kind of podcast.
Well, I think there was because I often watch these things on iPlayer, and I go and have a look for things on iPlayer because you do get the quirky films that you missed completely when they came out. So this one, it's a couple of years old, but I had completely missed it. But basically, it's really. But I've never saw it before, and I came across it, I thought, why didn't I know about this one? But yeah, it's a little film. I think it was broadcast and it's streaming to coincide with the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. So people are looking at this sort of heritage. And unlike most stories that dwell on the actual events of the war years, this is like, okay, what happened next? And this is what happened next for a group of children who were basically orphaned, rendered homeless, rendered just emotionally sort of bereft, as well as, sort of, and these are the children who had grown up in concentration camps. Some of them had been imprisoned for their whole lives, or their formative years were in concentration camps. And this is a story based on the true events of a group of children. The British government took in 730 something orphans who were liberated from the camps, where they were unable to identify any living relatives for them. And so they were trying to find a way. They didn't just want to sort of take these children and go, okay, here's this problem child, or here's this troubled child, let's give them to a family, and you're on your own. They introduced what's called the Windermere project, was to sort of try to introduce these children into sort of British way of life by teaching them English, and by all might socialising them, giving them social skills. So they were teaching them English, how to eat without thinking that someone's going to steal your food, how to have things that belong to you. So they gave them all their own clothes. They could choose their own clothes. They gave them their own bedrooms. They tried to teach them sports, and then slowly introduce them into sort of other people who outside of their experience, because often they were so disconnected to the way society behaves that they were just not fit almost to just be left out into sort of the wider world, because it's completely outside of their own whole experience. And so they need to be together, but they need to obviously be sort of learn these lessons. So it's a story, principally it focuses on the first group of these children who came to the Windermere. It's like an old army base where they've got like barracks, but they basically had individual rooms, so they had classrooms and dining rooms and playing fields. And they had Lake Windermere at the bottom of the road, and they had the woods, so they could.
So in the Lake District.
In the Lake District in England. So yes, it mainly focuses on 5 children, 5 boys who are now in their teenage years, but they've spent more or less their entire lives in either imprisonment or in the concentration camps. They're all Polish. And it's their journey over a couple of months of how they go from being sort of barely functioning to how they begin to think, okay, there is going to be life outside of this experience, and how to take their experiences, but to shape them in a way that they can live with it rather than always living in that place. It's like, you're always going to carry these memories with you, but they don't have to define you. And so it's a story of these 5 boys who have this unenviable connection in that they were all orphans, they were all raised in this way, and they all have this sort of trauma of surviving when all the people around them didn't. And some of them said, they had to steal food from people who were weaker than them in order for them to survive, and sort of taking that into their lives. And you see the teachers and the people who they have like psychologists, they have either just like a gym teacher, they have doctors, they have people there who to help them. And it's a story of how they've taken these damaged children and giving them a future.
Okay, so to ask what feels like a bit of a Sharon question, is there anybody recognizable, and did you recognize anybody in the film?
Ian Glenn plays the Scottish gym teacher. He's the only, and then there's Romeo Garai, one of the teachers.
Okay, yeah.
And
Ian Glenn, who I confused for a second with Ian McNeice. And I was like, I thought he died. But no, Ian Glenn is Game of Thrones. He was Ser Jorah in Game of Thrones.
He was Ser Jorah in Game of Thrones. Lovejoy, and yes, and he's in Silo as well. Quite recently.
Yes, he's in Silo, yeah.
And Romeo Garai is in it as well. She plays a German teacher who's trying to sort of help the children. So, and then you've got other people who sort of adults who've been through that experience who sort of try to help them from their perspective. They are the teachers or they're social workers. They work with children, and they sort of help them sort of foster some of these children. And apart from, but you would recognise. I would say 90% of the cast you probably wouldn't recognise. But those two you do.
So, what did you think of the film then?
I thought it was interesting. It's based on a true story, and it's not a spoiler, but the group of 5 that you actually focus on, it's based on their lives, because they became lifelong friends, and all of them stayed in Britain. All of them made careers. One of them was knighted when he was older. 2 of them formed businesses together, and you see them when they were teenagers, and then you see the real men in their 80s and 90s as they've forged this friendship together. And so it's sort of hopeful in that they came out of this awful situation, but they still found each other, and also they had a future, and they forged a future. I thought it was well acted. A few times I thought it's a little bit clumsy in some places. They had a few interactions with the local people. One of them was like a woman who was really sort of, I thought she was like a stereotype, really, of like what you'd think an uptight British person would be like. Not in my backyard, they're all thieves, they're all robbers, it was a little bit stereotypical. And you're thinking, I'm sure there's some nice people who sort of said, what, we welcome you, but you always meet the horrible ones. So there was one lady who's a little bit standoffish and was more worried about her dog than she was about what the trauma these children have gone through. And there's a couple of local lads who would do Nazi salutes at these kids, teasing them, and you're thinking, I'm sure they weren't all horrible, these locals. Some of those I thought fell into stereotype, but it needs to be done just to highlight the trauma these children have gone through. And even though the people have been through war in Britain, you couldn't really compare the wartime experience with those of these children.
It reminds me of, there was a documentary on Netflix called 5 Came Back, and it was about these 5 5 legendary Hollywood directors and what efforts they did during the Second World War. And there's a film called, I think it's Mrs. Miniver. Mrs. Miniver.
Yes. I know Mrs. Miniver. I read the book as well.
Yeah, with William Wyler. And I think I'm getting the right film, but there's a scene in it where they have like a German who ends up in a farmhouse with the title character. Yeah. And when they were making the film, people were saying, but people were like, no Germans are evil. You can't just make the German evil and all that kind of stuff. And the director ended up saying, look, I only have one German in this film. And it was like, I only have one German in this film. And with what's going on in the world right now, I need to show that this is the reality of what we're dealing with in world situation right now. So I'm going to make this German evil. And he actually said it, and it makes you think a little bit like what you were saying. It's like, well, we only have 5 minutes of screen time, and we're going to have these kids and everything like that. We need to drive home that this kid's had it bad, so we're going to do this. But anyway, that being said, how many stars would you give the Windermere Children?
I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. The fact that it was based on a true story and enhanced it a little bit. And yeah, I thought, well, worth a watch. But I give it a strong 3. I think it was quite a simply told story. Yeah, it was. It was interesting. I enjoyed it, but it didn't sort of elevate it into sort of anything more than a good couple of hours to watch. So I'd give it a strong 3. But yeah, 3. It's a 3 film.
All right, cool. That is 3 stars for the Windermere. Sounds very sort of like indie British. And now we go back over to yeah. Okay. And now we go back to cinema. We are going to talk about September 5 or September 5th, or as my Excel spreadsheet has changed this to SEP-05. when I typed it in, immediately went, no, you're trying to put it. No, it's a film title. Oh, so this film is. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
No, I was just saying. No, you want to say to the screen, just leave it.
Yeah, just
what I type.
Let me type my nonsense. It reminds me of my mum. When my mum first got a phone that could do autocorrect, and she was trying to type all this stuff, because obviously we use English very differently in Nigeria, and she was typing it and it kept correcting what she was typing, and she was like, no, let me type my nonsense. she kept saying that to her phone. Anyway, so this film is set in the Munich during the Munich Olympics of 1972. I think it was 1972. And this is, it's one of these things that I wasn't alive when it happened, but I heard about it afterwards. And it was how there was an attack by a group called Black September on the Israeli, it was an attack of a group of Black September who were standing for Palestinian rights. And it was an attack on the Israeli Olympic team in the Olympic Village in Munich during the Olympics. And this film is all about the broadcast of that. So the film is almost like a chamber piece. It's one of these films that's a little bit like almost like a play. It is very much like, it reminded me a lot of, do you remember Good Night and Good Luck?
Yes.
It reminded me a lot of Good Night and Good Luck.
I like that.
It's Good Night and Good Luck, I think it's a great film. It's not the film I thought it was going to be when I started watching, and it's a bit, because I was kind of like, okay, cool, what's going to happen with this? I'm talking about Good Night and Good Luck here. You start watching that film, and then after a while you realize, oh, they're not leaving the studio. We're just not going to leave the studio. And it's a bit similar with this, but I think having seen Good Night and Good Luck, I was kind of a bit prepared for what this is. And it kicks off, and you start seeing what's happening at the Munich Olympics and seeing all these different people. You get the idea of what's going on, of what having the Olympics in Germany means to the German people and the German economy. There's one particular character called Marianne, who is a German working for ABC, because this is the American broadcasters, ABC. And she's working for them as a translator. And you can see that you start, and one thing the film does very, very well is showing you how the different factions that they were. Because there were people who would have been alive during the Second World War who were still here. There's an old sort of techie guy who has to do with different cables, and he has a little bit of, you can see there's a little bit of xenophobia as to who he gives a cable to and who he doesn't give a cable to, and how she goes up to him and she's like, look, the whole eyes, and you can see that she's quite idealistic, saying the whole eyes of the world are on Germany. This is a chance to actually show the world that that we're rebuilding, that we're better, that we're not what people think we are. And you can see that's the way she sees it. And then you have that, and then you have, obviously, in the Americans, there's Americans and there's Jewish Americans who are working on this, and how they feel about being in Germany, broadcasting this thing, and that is all set up, and it's all I think it's all lovely. There's even a French character who is half Arab, who is and you have all this stuff set up, and then the attack happens. The way the attack, they do a thing which I think is a brilliant choice. They don't show the attack. Everything is shown from the point of view of the people in the studio. They hear gunshots, and they go, are those gunshots? And the older German dude is like, I'm old enough to remember what gunshots are. Those are gunshots. And the other ones are like, maybe they're just firecrackers or anything like that. Then they start getting phone calls coming through from different people saying, hey, have you heard this? Have you heard this? And then let's start asking around. Did you hear gunshots? It's like, oh my God, it was gunshots. Where do you think it was? We think it was in the Olympic Village. And little by little, because this is a pre-internet age, and I love the way this film is put together in that they show you how people gathered information before they could just go onto their phone, and there were like 15 different people filming the thing on their phone straight away. And it's like how this person goes out there, and this person uses this walkie-talkie, and this person uses this phone, and the ingenuity that had to happen, and the sort of like seat of your pants thing that had to happen. And so for somebody who does videos, and so for someone who does, I found the way that they went around putting this thing, I found it absolutely fascinating how they sort of like hack a phone to make sure that somebody can speak on the phone and they can go out onto the airwaves, and how they have to move a camera that is so heavy, and just so for me as a bit of as a film, like, as a video making geek, the way they went about doing things, when they went about putting captions on the screen, the way that they had to bring everybody together, I loved that. I absolutely loved that. I thought it was brilliant. I thought, oh my God, this is, I was like, it almost makes you start going, I feel nostalgic for a time that I never saw and I never will see. Imagine if it was like this again. So that bit was fine. But then they have this, but by focusing on that, they sort of do this, I think, a very, very clever thing. And the way it came across to me was that it becomes a conundrum. It becomes a conundrum because these people are focused on, what they're focused on is they're focused on doing a broadcast. They're focused on doing a broadcast, and because they're a sports team, they have this thing where the news team in America are trying to take it off their hands, saying, this is news. You guys are sports. You can't do this. And they're like, get away, screw you. We're like 100 yards from where this is happening. We're keeping this. And it's about how they sort of like, how they do it, and then they start having to sort of wrestle with the ethics of news reporting, which they're not used to. Things like, what do we call them? Do we call them terrorists? Do we go? It's like, what word do we use? And there's one guy there, Pete Jennings, who did a lot of the reporting from inside the Olympic Village, who's telling them like, okay, look, you guys don't understand this, but I've been in the Middle East for a while. These are the different things that come up. There's one particular bit, which is almost kind of like, because a lot of it is people looking at screens, but there's a bit where they realize that the broadcast that they are putting out live, because they're the only ones who are broadcasting live throughout the whole thing, the broadcast that they're putting out live and the pictures they're putting out live can actually be watched within the Olympic Village. So everything, like the police, what the police are trying to do on the outside to go in there and liberate the people, is being broadcast inside the Olympic Village where the hostages are, and they're like, oh my God. And
we're feeding information to the
exactly, and then it's all about that, and it's about, okay, and there's a bit where they sit and they hang on. It's like, hang on, was that our fault? Did we make that happen? Did that go on? And you can see them wrestling with it. And if you know your history, I didn't. I do not know this conflict that well. I do not know this incident that well. I didn't know how it ended. I did not know how it ended. So the way, and if you don't know how it ended before you're watching the film, I would recommend that you don't go and find out. You don't go on Wikipedia it. I know Sharon, you probably know how it ended. I mean, Holly, yeah. You're well read. You probably know how it ended. I didn't know how it ended, and
I'm not sure I do remember. I knew one, but I don't think I could tell you now. No.
Yeah. And because it's not a straightforward thing. It's just not a straightforward thing, and the way it goes, and even the way the film ends and all that, it's just kind of like there is this. The film ends with this almost kind of like, that was horrible, that was terrible, but hey, guess what? Life moves on, and it's especially when you are in broadcast, because the Olympics are still here. There's still stuff happening today, and it's kind of like, so what are we doing tomorrow? And it's not as flippant as I'm making that sounding, but there is, and I think that's one of the good things about this film, is that it doesn't try and make any big statements. It just focuses on the job that people had to do. And then you are left to think about all these other implications of the job that they had to do. And maybe almost even what would you have done in that situation? What was the right thing to do? And I thought it was quite good, especially when you think about world issues at the moment. I thought it was a very well done film. I think that there's great discussions between Peter Sarsgaard, Ben Chaplin, Josh Magaro. I just thought it was a very good film. I'll give it a 4 out of 5, and I would recommend that you go see it. And I think it would make a very, very good double bill with Good Night and Good Luck. So 4 stars for September 5 or SCP-05 as Excel things. And now we go over to Netflix and Friends, and we're going to talk Riviera. 10 years late. Holly, tell us about Riviera.
This is going to be an incredibly quick review. So,
We always say that, and it never is.
might well be this time. Premise of Riviera. Julia Stiles, very beautiful younger woman, married to a rich older man. She is a very independently minded art dealer, and they met because she was helping curate his collection. Beginning of the series, tragically, he dies. There is an explosion on a boat. He is on the boat. What happened? His ex-wife is very much on the scene, as are his 3 children, who are not much younger than Julia Stiles. And off Julia Stiles goes, trying to find out exactly what happened and what was real in her marriage, in her relationship. The things she thought she knew might not be what actually happened. And all of this goes against the backdrop of her living in this absolutely palatial, literally palatial home on the Riviera with beautiful, beautiful art, wonderful gardens. She has beautiful clothes. There are lovely cars. She arrives early on in a private jet. It is a gorgeously done series that is a delight to watch for the sunshine and the suitable what happened questions.
Well, that is, I remember when this first released, and it was pretty much it was advertised as lifestyle porn. It's like, oh, come look how the other half live. Oh my God, wouldn't you just love to live on the Riviera? But you can't because you're poor.
That's literally it. That is entirely. I spent the entire thing looking at Julia Stiles' clothes. I've nearly made it to the end of the 3rd series. By the 3rd series, very much. I feel like the horse has been flogged rather too. He's flogging now, ladies and gentlemen. The horse did not deserve this.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful, and I just watched the entire thing, going, I'd really like to have Julia Stiles' clothes. And her hairdresser in the 1st series, less so in the 2nd. It's just beautiful. It is lovely nonsense.
I remember watching it the first time round.
It's very, very beautiful.
Glamorous.
It brings nothing to life. It doesn't need to. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would recommend it to anybody who is missing sunshine and quite likes some actually reasonably twisty-turny mysteries.
So how many stars?
Watchable. I'm going to give it a 3.
Give it a 3.
Okay, so but lovely.
Okay, and if you can figure out if this is a spoiler or not, is it a mystery per season, or is it one mystery that just lasts for 3 seasons and they just prat about wasting your time?
Mystery per season.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool. So it's one of those things.
So often building on uncertainties from the season before.
Okay. All right, cool. So don't go live in the Riviera. You might think that it's nice to be this rich, but you will die.
I think you're okay as long as you're poor and living on the Riviera. Don't be rich on the Riviera and don't collect art.
All right, cool. So some of it's funny. I'm not sure if anybody watches the Strike TV series on BBC.
No, not yet.
All right. I think because you watch the Magpie and Moonflower Murders, right? Yeah, I think you would enjoy the Strike series. Especially there's one series, I think it's Troubled Blood.
I've watched those. Sorry, I mean the Cormorant Strike ones based on
Cormorant Strike, yeah.
I've read
watched
I've read Cuckoo's Calling.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the one you were talking about, like, younger wife, older person, previous wife still on the scene. There's one of them where I was like, hang on, this sounds very similar to the plot of one of these. I think it might be Troubled Blood, the one about the MP, Sharon.
Yes, you are right. Yes, there is the one about the MP. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, hang on a second, this is sounding quite kind of familiar, because I kind of binged them while I was trying to get a kid to sleep over the Christmas period. So I'm up to date. I'm up to date with my strike. And There was something else that you mentioned that. Oh, never mind. It will come back to me. But now let's go. Let's go back to cinema and let us talk hard truth. So, Holly, it is you again, and you are going to talk to us about Mike Lee. Mike Lee, who is making a comedy this time. It's a laugh-a-minute thing about lovely, jolly characters who don't have a
laugh
a laugh riot. I would actually like to see Mike Lee make a comedy. I would like to see what he thinks. I'd like to see what makes Mike Lee laugh. Because all I know about this is Marianne Jean-Baptiste playing a character called Poppy who doesn't like anybody, and yeah, that's about it. So
exactly. So it's
Northern by any chance? That's normally in there somewhere.
Very much not Northern, very London.
London.
So it's we're quite good at not liking people in London as well. To be fair, we do have a bit of not all of us. Some of us love people. Thank you very much. So it's it's a beautiful film that's arguably a vignette because in some ways nothing happens. It opens really with the existence of Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who is just marvelous in everything she does, as this fundamentally unhappy woman who dislikes everything. She has nothing good to say about a single thing. She doesn't have a good thing to say about her husband. She doesn't have a good thing to say about her son, who lives in his sort of own world, mostly hanging out in his bedroom. He's about 21. He has his headphones on all the time. He plays flying games on his computer. He reads books about planes.
He will probably tell you it's not a game, it's a flight simulator.
He would almost certainly tell you that. And he's quite a large young man, and he just sort of bumbles through life, clearly not really engaging with the world around him. Her husband, who is played by David Webber, is a builder who does house refurbishments. She has she has nothing good to say about him. She has a sister played by Michelle Austin, who is a hairdresser who is generally full of joy and engages very positively with the world. But they struggle to entirely relate to each other.
Yeah.
And you just watch a period of time in both their lives and the lives of Pansy's husband, Kurtley, and her son Moses, and Chantel's daughters, Kayla and Alicia, and you see their interactions with the world around them and their emotional responses to life, and the upbeat optimism sharing of the sister's family to the really closed-in sadness of Pansy and her family, and a whole load of questions about how people behave. Is honesty the best policy? Does brutal honesty,
or is it just meanness?
It clearly doesn't bring happiness as you look at the sadness that Pansy experiences, and you sort of unpick, whilst not really unpicking anything, where some of her pain comes from. And it is an absolutely beautifully done film. It's total, it's just, it's Mike Lee personified. You would, if you didn't know it was him before you saw it, you'd watch it and go, oh yes. I know from when this came. I spot the mind behind this.
I'm not even sure I've watched a Mike Lee film all the way through, and I know what a Mike Lee film is just by watching.
It's I'm trying to think what the first one I saw was, the sort of classic one.
Secrets and Lies.
Lies. That is, I watched that decades and decades ago, and that's sublime. It is a beautiful film, and it's in some way, it has an ending that does give you the possibility for some optimism, but it also doesn't, and that's not a spoiler in any way, shape or form, because, as I say, it's a vignette. It is just a look into the existence of this family and how they exist, and sadness, and it's beautiful. I would say for a cinema day cinema weekend of seeing The Brutalist, then A Complete Unknown, and then Hard Truths, there were three films that are not happy films. They are not smiley films.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anybody who
I've,
thinks Complete Unknown is cheerful has not actually watched the film.
yeah, well, I think
know
compared to
anything
compared to the other two, I think Complete Unknown is the comedy out of
way
this
more
lot.
cheerful, way more cheerful. But I love some bits of this. So it's a really, really good film. I'd
All right.
absolutely recommend watching it if you like films. If
All right.
you go to the cinema because you want escapism, this is not a film for you. If you go to the cinema because you enjoy the experience of putting your head into a completely different space, this is a really special thing to watch.
So what you're saying is that you will not be recommending this to your mum and dad?
I will not, under any circumstances, be recommending this to my mum and dad. Well, not at this moment in time. I think it's one that would probably be very interesting at some point to watch on TV in the future.
Yeah.
And you'd probably want to watch it on the sofa with a pot of tea and
a cat to stroke or something.
And then go and watch something really upbeat afterwards that reminds you of the joy of life as well as the sadness.
Or go for a walk with a puppy.
Go with a walk with a puppy. Go cuddle a baby and hope it doesn't vomit on you. Or scream in your ear. It is a sublime film.
So how many stars are we giving Hard Truths?
5.
5 stars.
It deserves a 5. It is so well done.
I do feel like Marianne Jean-Baptiste is one of those actors that is not lauded enough, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like she has been doing great work for loads of years. Doesn't seem to worry that much of the fact that she's not lauded, and as long as she keeps working, I think she seems to be happy. And I just think, anyway, and
talented. Really.
But also at the same time, she hasn't really courted Hollywood that much. She seems to be very happy to stay in England.
Yeah, well, she's done series and things though, because she was it Law and Order she was in?
What, American Law and Order?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's Law and Order. Let me check.
Oh, all right. Okay, cool. Okay, while you check that,
no, Without a Trace. Sorry.
Without a Trace. Okay, yeah.
Not quite the name recognition, but she was in that for 7 years, and she's very good in that.
Well, it goes without saying, it's Marianne Jean-Baptiste. Of
course she's good in it. Is there anything she's not good in?
Of course she's good in it.
She is a truly talented actor, and it made me think I would like to go and watch more things that she's in, because she is an interesting woman. And
in that case,
Secrets and Lies.
Yeah, she was in Secrets and Lies. Yeah, that was the first time I heard her name. All right, but in that case, if you want to see more stuff that
was her.
if you want to see more stuff that she's in, let me recommend a TV show on BBC iPlayer called "The Following Events Are Based on a Pack of Lies." That is the actual entire title of the show.
It's going on the post-it note.
Yeah, the following events are based on a pack of lies, and she's in that one. It's a bit kind of like Moonflower Murdery. It's a bit kind of like watch it to find out. Anyway, it has Marianne Jean-Baptiste. What else do you need? And now we go back to Netflix and Friends, and we are going to talk Prime Video, and this is a film called My Old Ass. And this film kicks off with a character whose name I cannot remember. I saw this from a while back. But it's a young girl. She has 2 friends. And the first time you meet them, they are in one of these areas of America. I think it might be Florida, but essentially it's kind of a place where everything is kind of like mangroves and maybe a little bit swampy. And people, like the kind of place where a 17-year-old will have their own boat to get around. Instead of having a car, they'll have a boat to get around because they just move from this place to that place, go to the shop. Everything is all kind of like on the water, one of those sort of settings. the first time you meet her, she is driving around with her friends, crashing into sort of like piers and all that, and going to this shop to meet this girl who she has an attraction to, and she's like, oh, I'm going to be going away soon, and her aim is to sort of like get with this girl before she goes away. And her and her friends, they just putter around. They're not really doing much. You get the feeling like they just hang around. Like this is the life. They just hang around. They don't really do much. And one night they decide to take some drugs, take the boat out to an island. They take some drugs and see what happens on when they're going on their trips. And they're also like trying to figure out what their different trips are. One of them's dancing by themselves by a fire, thinking that they're in a music video, and the other one has something else going on. And she thinks nothing is happening, and then all of a sudden she looks to her side and there's an older person there, played by Aubrey Plaza. And she's like, oh my God, where the hell did you come from? And it transpires that this person is her older self, and she is having a conversation with her older self. So her entire drug trip is her having a conversation with her older self, but in very kind of like sort of real detail, so that it's kind of it's like, is this just a hallucination or is this actually true? Because the older self starts giving her about all these different things, telling her about what's going to happen with her family, what's going to happen to her mom, what's going to happen in her future life, and all that. And then she asks, oh, do you have and then puts a number in her phone for her. And the next morning she tries calling the number, and like after she's off her drug trip, and Aubrey Plaza picks up, and he's like, oh my God, I didn't think this would work. And so they're having a phone conversation she's having a phone conversation with her older self. So this is her at the age of around about 17 having a conversation with her almost 40-year-old self, and which she put in the phone as my old ass. So they talk back and forth and all that, and she's like, is there anything I should know? And the older one just goes, I think it's a guy called Todd. It's like, stay away from a guy called Todd. We do not like a guy called Todd. And she's like, what the heck, whatever. And she just thinks that, and then the next day she meets a guy called Todd. And it's all, so the film becomes like, you know how you said about how Hard Truth is a vignette. It's a vignette about this small time, about this 2 weeks before this girl leaves home. 2 weeks before she leaves home and goes off to start her whole life. But only that she has her older self commenting to her about what is going on in her life at that point. And the way where the film ends up, it ends up in a very kind of, it's one of those life-affirming, if a little bit downbeat places that it goes to, where it's almost kind of like, it might be a little bit of a spoiler, but it's kind of, you know what, it's kind of thing that sort of says, I heard this thing earlier today where it says something along the lines of like, to tend a garden you have to have weeds. Like it's like if you have weeds, at least that means you have a garden or something like that. I'm angling up, but something along those lines. But essentially one of those things that says the good comes with the bad, don't try and avoid it, that kind of stuff. And I thought it was actually quite a good little film. It's probably about 90 minutes long. I thought Aubrey Plaza was brilliant as usual. The person who plays her younger self, I cannot remember the name. Sorry, it's been a while since I've seen the film, but I would recommend it on Prime Video. I would say go find my old ass. If nothing else, the title's just a lot of fun to say. go find my old ass on Prime Video. I would give it a 4 out of 5. And yeah, and I think it would really be holy. I think I think the film is really up your street. I think it's really, really up your street. So. Yes. So now the only thing that's left to say before we go and have like a quick thing about Maria and Baby Girl, who do we think has won this week? Netflix or cinema?
Cinema.
You think it's cinema? Yeah, probably is cinema actually.
It's not even close. It is cinema. It's a cinema. Yes, because we had a 4 or 4 and a 5, showing that yes, this truly is Oscar season, and some of the films are actually worth it, even though they might numb your bum. So that's what we would say. Go see all those. But quick, Holly, you said Baby Girl. You reckon you can talk to us about that really quickly? So talk to us about Baby Girl.
First, that Hard Truths, I think, is probably actually more Oscar-worthy than things that are likely to end up with Oscars.
Well, Hard Truth has not been nominated for the Oscars at all.
No, and it should be, because it is.
It has been nominated for the BAFTAs because, British. And it has not been nominated. It has not been nominated for the Oscars because British, and
but it is a better film, I think, than some of those that are kicking around. So, which one am I going with first, Maria or Baby Girl?
Baby girl, because you reckon you can do that quickly.
Okay, so Baby Girl is a film starring Nicole Kidman, who is a successful CEO of a company in her would be 50s, who's married to a theatre director played by Antonio Banderas. And she loves him very much, and she loves their children very much, and they have an ostensibly happy marriage, but she is not sexually satisfied in their relationship.
Dun dun dun.
And she, and that becomes very apparent very early on, in not suitable for children ways. But that she meets a young intern at her company who manages to somehow by accident catch her eye by calming down a dog that is running loose and has got away from its owner, and she becomes quite impressed with him at complete chance. She then finds herself working with him and falling into a relationship with him where she is the submissive party and he is I suppose the dominant member of this relationship. And the film watches their relationship, the risks she takes, what it means for her relationship with her husband. It's billed as being something terribly erotic and, groundbreaking, which it isn't. It's a very well constructed, well acted film about a woman who's trying to work out who she is, and that's a good thing. But say it's a good film about somebody exploring their own life. I think it has a reputation as being given a reputation for being more
salacious than he actually is.
Salacious, yes, is the word.
A bit like Challengers.
It's not actually a wildly. I did not find it a particularly wildly salacious film. There were young people in the cinema, says she in her mid-40s, who were tittering at it, which was a little bit bizarre because it's like, this is not, I don't know if you thought you were going to see 50 Shades of Grey. That is not what you were going to see. This is a more clever film about
hopefully people. It's better than that, because even that was like watching paint.
That is a very
like watching
low
paint
bar.
dry.
There is little that is not better than 50 Shades of Grey. Well, I will give it the edge over Monsternado. That's close.
Oh God! Yeah, the camera was in focus.
Exactly. It was not filmed on a phone. So it's a good film. I would absolutely recommend watching it. I don't think it's not as change the worldy as people seem to think it is, but I'd say it's a high 3 at a push of 4. Not going to change the world, but do give it a watch if you have time and you want to, watch something very well constructed and well shot about somebody kind of coming to terms with who they are and taking, and risking things in order to unpick their own personality. Is watchable.
Okay, this is another one of those tropes that I have issues with. But it's like, whenever they have a film where they're like, a woman tries to find out who she is, and that's just shorthand. That's Hollywood shorthand for she has a whole bunch of sex with somebody who's probably inappropriate. And that's apparently...
The interesting thing is not nearly as much sex as you would think.
Yeah, but essentially...
What makes it more interesting, because I think it's been billed as Nicole Kidman has lots of sex. It is not Nicole Kidman has a lot of sex.
Yeah, but it is a trope that they go, woman's unfulfilled in her life, therefore the only way she can deal with this is have an affair. That especially if it's a married woman.
It's much... And that's what lets it down, because actually it's a more clever film than that. But the Hollywood trope is exactly that. So if ever a film, falls within that space vaguely, it's going to be caught under that, the banner of that trope, rather than being allowed to be a film in its own right.
Yeah,
and I think it probably loses out as a result of that. And it may deserve to be thought of better than I did think of it. Because I wasn't as blown away by it that this is Oscar worthy, this is going to change the world. I was like, is it?
Okay. All right, cool. In that case, I think we'll leave Maria until next week. We'll see. Maybe finally Maria will get her day. But 3 or maybe 4 stars for Baby Girl. Go watch it. And essentially, I have this whole thing where I know I have prejudices. I have prejudices, especially when it comes to film. And I like watching things that challenge or at least eradicate or circumvent my prejudices. And yeah. I'm going to watch this, hopefully that this will get rid of that, because that trope is something that really, really annoys me.
It's an interesting film. I think you'll find it interesting, and I would look forward to hearing what you make of it. Because
all right,
it is worth more than is suggested. It's worth more than the trope would allow.
It's not like an Adrian Lyne or Adrian Lyne. I never know how to pronounce his name. Late 70s, late 80s, early 90s, Fatal Attraction.
No.
Kind of like, yeah, because he had a run of erotic thrillers. I can't remember what the others were called. But anyway.
It warrants an actual. If you watch it, it warrants you and I having an actual conversation about it, having seen it.
All right, cool, good stuff. I will find. Well, it's actually still in my local cinema, but I only get 2 films a week, and
you don't need to rush to see it in the cinema. It can wait 6 months.
All right, cool, good stuff. All right, cool. I think that's it for this week, and until next week, when we'll see what random stuff gets more traction than we weren't expecting on our YouTube channel. So goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Bye. Oh, that's better. I feel slightly better about the state of the world now.